Last now 65 hours. That what happened to Flight 847.
It's the middle of the night on America's east coast, but it's mid-morning Friday over the Aegean Sea, where this plane, TWA Flight 847, is bound for Rome from Athens, or so the 153 passengers and crew aboard think.
Two men who were sitting in the rearmost seats of the aircraft got up and ran to the front of the plane. They went into the cockpit. One of them reemerged with a gun.
The two men are Ahmed and Ali, young Shiite Muslims from Lebanon, and they've managed to sneak guns and grenades through the Athens airport security, and they've hijacked Flight 847 and ordered it to Beirut. It's almost dawn over America as the plane approaches Beirut Airport, which has refused it permission to land. The pilot, Captain John Testrake, says he must land, and he does.
Beirut, the hijacker has pulled the pin on his hand grenade. He will land at Beirut. He is desperate.
19 passengers are released, women and children who, with the others, have spent hours with their heads between their knees, terrified.
I didn't see anything because you see our heads were down, and we weren't allowed to look up. If we were scolded. I mean, he was hollering loud at us.
The plane is refueled, but not fast enough for the hijackers, Ahmed and Ali.
They are beating the passengers. They are beating the passengers. They are threatening to kill them now. They are threatening to kill them now. We want the fuel now, immediately.
It's early afternoon in Beirut when the plane takes off for Algiers, and the remaining 100 or so Americans aboard who thought they were heading home to places like Algonquin and Asheville and Indianapolis and Laredo now don't know where their journey will end, or how, or why. 4 hours later, Flight 847 lands in Algiers. 22 more passengers are released. Ahmed and Ali release a list of 6 demands, including the release of nearly 800 Shiites currently held prisoner in Israel. They say they are deadly serious. We have come to be martyred, they say.
They would shoot an American every 5 minutes if they did not get their demands met.
It's evening in Algiers when Ahmed and Ali suddenly order the plane back to Beirut. On approach there, Captain Testrake's calm professionalism begins to crack.
Situation is desperate. We are almost out of fuel. I implore you, sir, to cooperate and allow us to land this aircraft before we crash.
This time at Beirut, the stop is short and deadly. A passenger, identified as an American, is shot and killed by the hijackers and thrown out of the plane. Several passengers with Jewish-sounding names are apparently taken off. Their whereabouts are unknown. And Ahmed and Ali are joined by half a dozen or more armed men for yet another flight just before Saturday dawns on the Middle East.
TWA 847, 108 passengers and 8 crew. TWA 847, destination Algiers.
Flight 847 will spend the next 25 hours in Algiers. The hijackers are joined by their accomplice left behind in Athens. In return, the hijackers release 66 more hostages.
I hope everybody back home will pray for us. May God show us mercy to us.
It's early Sunday morning, Father's Day in America, when the hijackers suddenly break off negotiations and order the plane once again back to Beirut, with about 30 hostages, all men and mostly Americans apparently, still on board. Flight 847 lands at Beirut with only 5 minutes of fuel left. Here it will spend this Sunday. Since Friday morning, Flight 847 has flown the equivalent of a third of the way around the world. They call it Flight 847's Odyssey. Well, it's not an Odyssey, not yet. We might pray that it will be. In Homer's Odyssey, you'll recall, in the end, everybody lived happily ever after. Richard Threlkeld, ABC News, New York.
5 minutes to 5 in Beirut at this time, and to review as best we can. We've just talked to Beirut again. It is quiet there now. There is not much traffic between the tower and the hijackers on board. 31 people are still on board. The cockpit crew of 3 who've been in that cockpit for so long and who have performed unquestionably heroic tasks so far. No communication at the moment. The passengers did have some food this evening. The hijackers, in fact, communicated with the tower at one point and said they were sick of cheese, and so there were sandwiches brought out, though they had made a request for chicken and for meat. So there has been some food this evening. It is a fairly quiet time on board, we understand, and the passengers perhaps have their heads down. There have been indications in the last couple of days there has been some opportunity for them to sleep. They've clearly been moved around on the aircraft. The hijackers would most likely have put the most able-bodied men sitting next to the windows. The shades are probably drawn. How do we know that? Well, we talked earlier this evening to Bob Peel Sr., the man who was released and sent to the American University Hospital in Beirut with an injury that he had actually suffered before he got on board. And he said, yesterday I went to the bathroom, requested permission, and as I walked down the runway, or walked down the aisle between the seats, I began to look for my wife. I looked for her on the way back, and I still couldn't see her. He didn't know until he got off the aircraft in Beirut that his wife had been one of the first released in Beirut on Friday morning. The plane has not been fully refueled. The hijackers had been urged to get refueling at one point when the tower warned Israeli planes might be coming. That turned out not to be true. They have not refueled. In Beirut, in Jerusalem, in Washington, and in Damascus, the officials and the hijacking experts, if there are any experts on hijacking, ponder how to get out of this. Nabi Berri, the head of a Shiite militia, may be an important player between the United States, ambassador in Israel, Reginald Bartholomew, and yet talking to other Shiites of perhaps a different persuasion. The International Committee of the Red Cross may end up negotiating with Israel for the release of prisoners in Israel who the hijackers want. We will continue to keep you up to date as best we can and as reliably as we can on this story throughout the night and tomorrow on Good Morning America. I'm Peter Jennings. Thank you very much for joining us. Keep your fingers crossed. Good night.
Hostage Flight, TWA 847, has been a presentation of ABC News.
We're here live at the International Airport, and as you mentioned, apparently there was some mix-up in the plans, and the plane landed at the old airport instead of here. Apparently everybody is safe aboard, and apparently in well mind also. Our other crew is at their house right now, and we're going to try to get a live eye from there from now. But right now the situation is they are back home and they're safe. That.
All right, thank you, Danny. Unfortunately, we got slipped on this one. They landed at a different airport out on Mines Road, but as Danny mentioned, we will be coming back to you later on at 10 o'clock tonight with a full report.
We did have word that they were landing at the Laredo International Airport, and there was a huge crowd of news media out there, but the plane slipped in at the old airport, and we're going to cover our bases, though, and we'll be back at 10 o'clock, or rather after the baseball game, with an update on the whole situation.